Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Speaking Of, my interview podcast series in which I talk to the movers, shakers, and deep thinkers in our beloved information and governance spaces. Today, we're speaking of crises and how never to waste one. It's a rather sardonic perspective shared with me by the one and only Cheryl Banke, the force behind Belvedere Consulting and a nationally recognized expert in records and information management, information governance, privacy compliance, and technology enablement. I'm thrilled to have her on the line with me right now. So, hello, Cheryl, and welcome.
Hi, Steve. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is fun. Let's start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, a few well-placed sentences to fill in the brief sketch I just painted, and then we'll get right into it.
I've been in the records management and information governance space for about 30 years now. Kind of started in the legal area. I was an executive admin for the General Counsel of Waste Management years ago, and really kind of caught the bug. I'll tell a story later about that, but and found myself involved in it. Went to school, got a master's degree in library and information science. Really got put the nails down and got my CRM and really progressed through several organizations in manufacturing, hospitality, and one of our labs, our national labs, as a records manager, and really have enjoyed the whole plethora of things that records managers do. And I'm also a paralegal as well, so that helps from a litigation perspective. I have a lot of IT experience, and I have a lot of kind of conglomeration of experiences and focuses of study that not a lot of records managers have, but I'm happy to say that I do, and I find them to be very helpful.
Yeah, I bet. One of the things that's become clear to me over my 30 years in the biz, by the way, we both started when we were 7, so.
I know.
Yeah, we won't do that kind of math. But as a discipline, it does cut across so many other parts of organizations and different kinds of business processes, and being strictly focused on the record itself. Obviously, I mean that's the core of it, right? Mm-hmm. But how to do it best and throw off the maximum benefit for an organization does require absorbing these other or information and knowledge and experience from all these other areas. The fact that you have the direct law experience as a paralegal and your IT and I think you're a good role model in that sense. If there are younger people watching this, as often there is, or there are.
Thank you.
I raise that as something to aspire to, because the more you're informed about what happens around records and information, the more effective you can be. And the way things are progressing, we both have now used records management and information governance kind of together, because that is the way the world is progressing. Mm-hmm. So, yay for you. And hopefully others can learn from it. Okay, so there's a lesson I didn't know we'd get to, so that's cool. Part of those experiences that you have absorbed over the year, I imagine, is what led you to say to me, whenever that was, some conversation we had a little while ago, about never waste a crisis. And I absolutely loved that, because for sure, the opportunities that I've had to help organizations, the ones that progressed most quickly and effectively were those that were bred of some emergency. Mm-hmm. We had a breach. Yeah. We had a lawsuit. We had a flood. Yeah. It's like, you could have made it hurt less if you thought of this first, but okay. Yeah. So I don't want to answer it for you, but I'm guessing you've experienced that, and that's what led you to distill it in that way, which I
I
thought was
have,
brilliant.
and well, and I would say that I'm not the original person to say that. I've heard it said in a number of conferences or a number of places, and it's always, sticked with me. So I don't want to take credit where credit isn't due,
Take credit.
but I
Who's gonna
do
know?
I do feel that it's very poignant, and I do say it to customers, to clients, when I feel that they need to hear it. So I don't go in trying to scare clients, but I do when I feel it's warranted. I do mention that. So yes.
Is that do they do they find you because they've had a problem? I mean, how does it come up? Like, maybe
Yeah.
tell us a story.
um, Today in my consulting business, I have a number of times come in to help solve a problem, a crisis, at varying degrees, right? So, you know, probably the most current one that I see is an audit. That somebody has failed an audit seems to be pretty prominent. There was a period of time when I started my consulting business in 2016 that it was more litigation response
Hmm.
and baked in their privacy requirements, changes in privacy requirements, depending on the client. Um, but I've seen a lot of audit lately, so yeah.
Interesting.
Hmm.
So, from the perspective, especially of a practitioner, as opposed it's the other end of the telescope, if you will. We look at it as consultants and what we see, but the real objective of this is to try to put ourselves in the practitioner's shoes. And I think the question is the same. It's just the perspective may be a little bit different. Um, how do you recognize a crisis? I mean, obviously, in the cases I mentioned, something bad happened and somebody got in trouble, and then
Hmm.
my phone rings,
Yeah.
or you see somebody's
I
looking for a new job. But if
Yeah,
you're
and I
in,
have
if yeah,
I
go ahead.
have I have been brought into clients to help them with one thing, and I have a series of questions that I ask them. That's where my librarian skills kind of come out, from a few years of being a reference librarian. It helped me develop my question skills. And sometimes a client will bring you in for something that they think they need to have done, and then you realize that they actually had a breach, but they didn't hire you to help them with the breach necessarily, but it comes up, or they have a lawsuit or something other. They're like, when you start the conversation, they're like, oh, wow. And they connect the dots that those things are going on as well. So you can help them with multiple things in some instances. But I think how to recognize a crisis is, I, I like to take a step back and think about the definition, not to get too academic, but the definition from GARP about information governance, right? The definition is the oversight, direction, and high level monitoring and control of an enterprise to ensure achievement of defined and approved objectives. So,
Hmm.
that high level monitoring and control is, to me, the key word is you should know what's going on, right? Like, what's going on in the business. And it's important for records managers to keep apprised of what's going on in the business. So if an audit happens, a lot of times record managers are brought in to respond to audits. Um, and there's a whole methodology I have for that and thought that I have for that. But, you know, what comes to mind is audits, incidents. One of the first things that I remember experiencing working for the general counsel at Waste Management was actually there was an environmental hazardous spill that happened in the state of California. And it was March of 1990. And I had just found out that I was pregnant with my second son. And I came into work and I found out there was this big hazmat situation that we had to deal with, and we had to find all the records for all the materials that were on the transportation vehicle that got spilled, and what was in them. And it became this very big lawsuit. The whole spill shut down one of the major expressways in the state of California. We had a lot of press. It was very intense. And so, early on in my career, I recognized that it's really key to kind of keep apprised of what's going on in the business always. And at Waste Management in the 90s, records really wasn't a thing. If you can realize it really wasn't.
Yeah.
But the Kettleman City situation incident allowed us to develop our records management program. So we took advantage of that situation and we developed our whole program, and records management became, part of the legal department, but very specific to handle records. So we really took the advantage of that incident. Other things that happen are, all of us know about litigation, right? And the impacts of litigation. Breaches. Today, I recently read something about in 2025, they were expecting an uptick in breaches by 11% from the previous year. So that's, no big news. And they're kind of gauging it by the number of victims involved.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. Other things that we don't necessarily think about that I have a lot of clients talk or have happened to them is major changes in the business. So are they relocating? Are they shutting down a facility? Is there someone in the C-suite that's leaving? Is there an acquisition or a divestiture happening? So those are things that the records management people should be aware of and keep track of what is happening overall in the business. And then there's some very typical ones that we see happen day to day, and I wouldn't necessarily classify them as crisis, but they are situations that happen where new tools, right, new technologies affect us. Before we had email, right, we had inter-office mail. Email was a big thing, right? Then the internet, right? We had the internet around the same time, right?
I remember this well.
Yes, and then cloud computing, video conferencing, chat, social media. Now we have AI. What's next, right?
Right.
So it's we have to stay on track with all of those things that are constantly happening, and we have to think about it from a records and an information governance framework. Another thing that I was thinking about was deprecation of tools. So I had a scenario. I was the director of records and information governance for an organization, and we had a very crucial system that had primary sources that were structural drawings. And we could not have them. And we had to deprecate the system and go to a new, more robust system for a number of reasons. And we had to really look at the contract, know who owned the records. We had to have several negotiations with the vendor. And we had to really find and work towards getting our data from that vendor. And then we had to also make sure that we got an attestation and a log file that showed that they deleted it from their systems. So that we could migrate it into a new system as well. We had to get that data. Now, we were able to save the organization $80,000 because they were basically holding our data hostage.
Right.
And we told them we were not going to do that. We were not going to allow that. They wanted to charge us $80,000 to get our data, and we pushed and we saved the $80,000. So it's really important to know when new tools are coming on and when tools are being deprecated as well. So
Yeah, no,
that's really
there's a
key.
lot to unpack there. So let me play some of it back, and there's a lot of really great stuff, and that's why you're here. So yeah, okay. So in no particular order, but I did hear a couple of themes that I wanted to bring forward. Anybody who's watching this and cares to take notes or whatever.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I love the point that you bring up that basically I interpret it as pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on around you to anticipate a crisis, maybe even before it happens. And a crisis, not like you need first responders kinds of crisis. It could be a crisis in terms of being overwhelmed by a task. So I had a client that the company had recently made a bunch of acquisitions, and now they had to try to synthesize all the different benefit in policies and who's supposed to get what from all these different companies. Who made the transition into the new company and who didn't, and who being alerted to the fact that that's happening allowed the group to get ready for it.
Yep.
So it didn't turn out to be a crisis like, the earth swallowed up the building or the hurricane blew away the Dropbox for, all the incoming invoices or bills or checks or whatever.
Right.
But I think that general awareness is really key. I unfortunately have spent too much time over the years with too many people in the records function who just define themselves in terms of that records function. And I think as business has evolved, and you talked about sort of point number 2, which is paying attention to the new tools and what does that mean for policies and procedures and whatnot. But you can't afford to have your head in the sand that way, because events are going to continue to roll forward. And eventually you're going to get involved. You'll be volunteered, as the expression goes.
Yep.
So thinking through, what's next. I mean, in the beginning of social media, it was all the discussion, do you need separate policies, one for Facebook and one for Instagram and one for, and eventually it's like, no, you just need one for social media. Because otherwise, every time there's a new one, never mind that they kept buying each other. And just as a side note, you talked about before email. I actually was the editor of the leading newsletter about the emerging email technologies back in the early and mid 1980s. I was fresh out of college and fascinated by all this stuff.
I can't remember what we called the team at Waste Management when we deployed email. We had Lotus Notes was the first email, and I was on the Lotus Notes team. It was quite interesting.
It was cool too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was an actually really cool tool. We definitely liked it. The C-suite didn't want anything to do with it.
Nope, and they still don't. Except maybe email.
So, yeah.
But, look what it's become. I mean, email is one of the thickest, thorniest issues in terms of records and governance and things, topped maybe only by the collaborative platforms, the Google Workspaces and Teams and, and that's not the conversation for this edition of this show, but it also, there's so much overlap. I think just making note of these other potential flashpoints or conflict points or potential crises.
Yeah, and you mentioned flood. I've also been involved. Flood is like one of the two things, actually, flood and fire. So flood is the most common records crises. right?
Yeah, it's because all the boxes are in the basement.
Yeah, and even server rooms sometimes
Yeah.
you, depending on the organization, you never know where the servers are actually sitting. So even though they may have cloud solutions, they might still have some servers around. So
Oh, yeah.
and then fire, I was involved. I was working for a privately held organization that had a lot of very independently wealthy people running the business in the Chicagoland area, and they were building a yacht, and there was a fire on the yacht. And that was fascinating. Not only is the maritime law fascinating, but because it's a whole different game legally, but dealing with trying to find the records on what was actually on the boat as they were building it was quite a task.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, and
So,
I just made this point to somebody else just in the last day or two. I can't remember whom, and I probably shouldn't out them anyway. But we were talking about this, and I suddenly realized in the context of floods, not just talking about hurricanes and things, talking about
right.
like your fire suppression system
Yep.
breaks and the
Yep.
sprinklers go off.
Yep. Exactly.
And because this stuff happens, and it's not like you think it's going to happen at any moment and you're braced for it. But, having a tarp to unroll if you suddenly have to across the ceiling may not be a bad idea when and done as an investment.
Yep.
And
Yep.
again, I said it kind of to be funny, but yeah, these boxes are often in the basement.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's like, well, that's fine, but what if? Oh, so I'll tell a quick story. Regular viewers may remember I've told this before, but I had a client in South Florida, and we were talking about this because they have hurricanes and things there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they said, "Oh no, we know. So we don't keep our stuff here. We send it off site." I said, "Oh, great. Where do you send it?" "We send it to Tampa." It's like they have hurricanes in Tampa too, I think, don't they? Have you thought about like Omaha?
Yeah.
So
Northern
there's
Texas, maybe.
well something,
Yeah.
and they got it and they were open to it, and the fact that was there. I mean, they knew, so they recognized various crises before they became crisis level. But as we sort of get towards the end of our chat here, and I say that for myself because it's just, we could talk for hours, I suspect, and will over the next however long, I hope.
Yeah.
But you had also made a comment that, and this seems like a good jumping off point to that. The notion is that one of the biggest barriers is thinking we're experts. And I mentioned it now because this client in South Florida, they knew what they were about pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they didn't think about, they thought about getting their stuff off site, but they didn't really think about why or how far. So they did take steps.
Mm-hmm.
And so good for them. They knew what they were doing, except there was a little bit more to go.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a time and a place for us to kind of lead the pack, if you will, and, be the expert in the room. But I say that the biggest barrier that records and information governance has is thinking that we're the experts, because the clients know their records. They know their business. It's the same thing like if you're trying to help them build a retention schedule and you say, okay, HR records are supposed to be kept, hiring records are supposed to be kept for 6 years, right? But they have a reason that they want to keep them for 10 years. Might be, litigation, past litigation reasons, other business reason, other state that they're thinking about doing business in that they're not yet, things like that. They're going to know a little bit more about what their records are, what their records contain, and how it affects them business-wise from a retention perspective. So, and also triggering events as well. So they're going to know if something is going to work from a trigger event or not, right? So it's not to come in there and say, hey, we're the records management experts. We're going to tell you what to do. It's more about a conversation back and forth. So tell me why you need those HR records for 10 years. Has there been a lot of litigation? Have you had failed audits? Have you, things like that. Just open-ended questions, and don't assume that you're going to come in there and tell them what to do is really key and really important.
Yeah, and I know you were speaking there really from the perspective as a consultant, but I think it's equally true, and maybe more so, when you talk about the records and governance people within an organization serving their own organization, because done correctly, you really are an internal consultant to the rest of it, to the rest of the operation, and take that same approach. I couldn't help but smile too, though, because sorry, I'll actually say it out loud. I won't name names. I have a fair amount of clients over the years who really don't know as much about their own records and retention and blah, blah, blah that you just outlined. And they really should. And that's part of the value too. Certainly for me as a consultant, but for those watching that, this is your job. And if you are in a place that maybe hasn't taken this to heart yet, and now they're ready to, either because they smartened up or somebody new came in, or there was a crisis, or you just took a new job at a place because, done the way we really want it to be done, they should be looking at you as an expert, which is another reason not to keep your head just in the records sand. To pay attention to all the other dynamics and to really be a trusted advisor internally. That's hard and a topic for a different episode. Yeah. And certainly we've done episodes on this, and those of you, hopefully you've seen it. If not, please join us once a month pretty much. Other consultant buddies of mine, Jesse Wilkins, Donda Young, we do this monthly IG Community Roundtable, and we've done it on this subject: how do you become relevant or more relevant, or insinuate yourself into all of that, and we started with never waste a crisis. And you won't waste it, so to speak, if you are viewed as an expert resource who knows how to deal with this, A, and B, knows how to prevent it, either in the first place or from recurring.
Yeah, be that trusted advisor. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think I would say also the important thing is, if it is truly a crisis, to remember to think logically and remain calm, right? Like, think of calm as a strategy. So I think of things like the movie The Martian, right? Or Michael Clayton are like two of my favorite movies, because like in The Martian, he remains, instead of despair, he treats the catastrophe like a spreadsheet problem. He really does.
Yeah.
You know? And then in Clayton, he just, he's observant and quiet and, determined, and he's not theatrical, and he is controlled. So it's important that when there is a crisis, that you're methodical and you've thought about how you're going, as a records manager, how you're going to handle a crisis. So it's important to think about those things and watch other organizations go through crises, and what do they do with it? Because those crises, when a crisis happens, it's an opportunity to educate your team. It's an opportunity to educate the organization from a records perspective. I started with the Kettleman City example at Waste Management. That really helped us determine that we needed a real program. So in its own way, those crises, big or small, can help you really draw and perfect your program. And really pay attention to what was done, what worked, and what didn't work. And you should always have like, I forget what they call that. I can't think of the name right now. Where your lessons learned, you
A,
talk
po-
through with the team, what
a
was the lessons
post-mortem,
you
as
learned.
they would,
Yes,
yeah, yeah,
postmortem,
yeah,
that was the
yeah,
word I was thinking of, yes.
yeah.
So make sure you do that whenever there is a crisis and it's over, and sometimes the crisis doesn't end. If it's litigation, it might go on for 10 years, so.
Yeah.
But as long as you're learning from it and you're documenting what you've learned and you're being very logical about everything and very purposeful about everything, it can be a good thing. Sounds crazy.
Two words: job security.
Right. But you won't have job security if you freak out. You've got to remain calm and level-headed and logical.
Well, you talk about movies and based in real life, of course. Apollo 13, work the problem,
Right.
work the
Yep.
problem, and that's
Yep.
really good advice just in general. But in terms of our subject today, yeah, I think that's a great way to sum this up.
Mhm.
So this is great. Like I said, we could go on for hours and hours. Thank you
We could.
for taking the
Yeah.
time. And
You're welcome.
would you come back and see us again sometime?
Sure.
Because that would be awesome. Folks who are watching, as always, I encourage you, send us your thoughts, comments. You can send the complaints directly to Cheryl. But we really thrive on it being a dialogue. It's one of the reasons you don't see me opining at this length by myself, because the real value is sharing our experiences, all of us together, to learn from each other, to do our jobs better. And we're the most reachable people in the world on the aforementioned internet.
Yes. Yes.
So Cheryl, again, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Everybody,
It's my pleasure.
tuning in. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
This has been Speaking Of with Steve Weissman, the InfoGov Guy, a Hollywood production.